Immigration Minister Marc Miller is defending new funding for Quebec. Ottawa will give the province $750 million to help with the cost of managing asylum seekers, both in the past and now. But BC Premier David Eby says some of that money should go to Western provinces.
I'll say for British Columbia, how frustrated we are to see the money being showered down on Quebec and Ontario, and us scrabbling around for what's left over. It's not acceptable. It is not okay.
Earlier, I spoke to Minister Miller about that funding and Ottawa's program to try and get extended family members of Canadians out of Gaza. Minister Miller, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me on, Rosemary.
I want to start with sort of the news of the week, and that is the federal government's pledge of $750 million to help Quebec deal with asylum seekers. I think that's over a 2-year period, sort of like a repayment, I think. Premier had asked for $1 billion. Maybe you can just explain to us why this amount of money so much money was given to Quebec to address the concerns of the Premier.
It's really as you described it, Rosemary. Quebec has taken on a disproportionate number of asylum seekers, particularly over the last 2 years. There's cumulative effects of prior years as well, but it's come with clear expenses that Quebec, frankly, shouldn't have to pay. They have a responsibility to take on asylum seekers just like other provinces, but it has added up. And over the course of pretty good working sessions with our partners in Quebec, we agreed on a number of $750 million to compensate them precisely for the disproportionate burden of asylum seekers that they've been taking on, as Ontario has as well. It comes with other commitments that over the course of relationship with Quebec we've seen as important for the federal government to step up, notably in renewing of work permits to make sure that people have a level of French that's fair in a nation like Quebec. So a number of other concrete steps that we agreed to make sure that we are working with Quebec. Quebec's assuming its place in the Federation to make sure that when it comes to asylum seekers, we are doing right by each other and each, assuming the responsibility in our own jurisdictions.
As you well know, this sort of raised the ire, I think that's fair to say, of Premier David Eby in British Columbia. He says that immigration money is being showered down on Ontario and Quebec at the expense of Western Canada, and that Western provinces should also get some help dealing with immigration issues. What is your response to that claim by the Premier?
A bit surprising in the context, perhaps not in the electoral context that he is in, but it is something that, if they are willing to take on more asylum seekers and assume the role as a proportion of the population that they should be playing with respect to the housing of asylum seekers, they should. And there are a number of working tables that we have created in order to affect that. And I've gotten very good signs and have always had a very good working relationship with Premier Eby on a number of issues, including in my prior role, and indeed he's been a very thoughtful person. Less so this time, but I think the message is this: we're all in the same boat. The asylum seeker flow is not going away anytime soon, despite best efforts. And it's something that all provinces need to step up on, particularly when it comes to as a proportion of the population, Alberta and British Columbia. But it would not come without financial compensation. In the programs that we have put forward over the last 2 years, BC has in fact not asked for any money. And so that's a discussion that we need to have and probably not in the public sphere.
Sure. I mean, he does make the point in his statement that he put out after this that his population is growing very quickly, more than 10,000 people every 37 days. So he is, I guess, struggling to take on a huge immigration flow, which can include asylum seekers or not, and I guess is asking the question about how much of that burden he is expected to carry alone.
Yeah, and fair enough. I think to the extent it isn't connected to the issue that he was targeting, BC has seen a climb, particularly in temporary residence, particularly in the topic that has been quite public over the last few months, international students. Yeah. That is something that they have a significant amount in regulating their designated learning institutions over and control over. And that's something that we have signaled quite clearly that we need to rein in collectively as a country, BC and Ontario being the primary ones that really need to get a grip on these programs. We're going to continue working on that, and particularly when it comes to BC, I've seen very encouraging signs as to what the place they want to see their designated learning institutions tend towards. in making sure that students are properly welcomed here when they come from abroad in the numbers that make it fair for the economy and all the needs that they have in British Columbia. So I'm pretty hopeful about that, but it's going to take a lot more work than just talking about it in public.
I want to talk to you about the situation in Gaza and the temporary residency program to try and get Palestinians who have family members in Canada out of Gaza. Maybe you can just start by updating us on how many Palestinians have made it to Canada through that program, or how many are in the process of applying, sort of any sort of status you can give us on that.
Yeah, so listeners will know that we increased the program to 5,000 very recently. We have several thousand in the application process. To the extent we have been able, or people have been able to get out, notably through the Rafah crossing, there are about 600 visas that have been issued, with a portion of those people that have made it to Canada. Admittedly, it looks like a trickle. This is not the program or the level of success that we would hope with this program. I wouldn't say not through fault or effort on behalf of Canada. In fact, we've deployed significant effort to be able to get people out and into Canada, but we would have wished for more at this period, particularly given the devastating reality of life in Gaza. The best way to make this program a success is to have a ceasefire, to have hostages released, so that we can have a regularized program where we could keep people here temporarily while we look at what post-governance Gaza looks like. I just spoke to the Egyptian ambassador, have gotten written assurances from their Department of Foreign Affairs, the minister themselves, that they'll be helping us with this program. A lot of these people will be temporarily in Egypt. That puts an extra pressure on Egypt, which has a huge number of asylum seekers from a number of countries. So the pieces of the puzzle are in place, but the fact that Rafah crossing is closed is something that is inescapable, and Canada does not control that, as you know well.
Yeah, it doesn't obviously take away from the frustration that Palestinian Canadians are feeling, even though you were forthcoming with how much you would be able to help with this. But we've spoken to Palestinian Canadians who have paid, as you know, tens of thousands of dollars to get their family members out of Gaza. Sometimes they pay the money and they only get one or two people out. They are taking on personal debt to do that. And I wonder, is there nothing that the government could do on that front? Loans, for instance, programs that would allow these people to get some financial help to try and get their families out, given that you have limitations on what you can do?
Well, we certainly are providing supports when people get here. This is a program that was based on sponsorship, family sponsorship. It was not designed or put in place to reflect the fact that people would have to bribe and pay exorbitant sums for people to get out of Rafah. That's the reality on the ground. I've spoken directly to a number of families that in one case paid over $100,000. I don't think you'll find a situation where the Government of Canada will entirely compensate people for the bribes that they paid to third parties of dubious description. But it is of immense frustration. I will not put myself in the place of those families, but we will work even harder to make sure that people, when they are safe, do get to Canada if they pass all the security clearances, and then look at supporting them when they get to Canada, whether it's work permits, whether it's interim health benefits, or other settlement services that they are entitled to. This is a somewhat comprehensive program compared to what you may look at in other countries. It's something that when we do have those numbers and when the people do come to Canada, we can look back hopefully with some element of pride, but at this point, there's no joy in anything that's going on, but we're doing our best to get people out.
Minister Miller, thank you for making the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Rosemary.